Hello and welcome. Firstly, a definition of metaphysics and quantum physics. Metaphysics, meta meaning above, beyond, or behind, a domain to which many leading edge scientists, philosophers, and theologians ascribe consciousness, can be defined as the foundational dimension of reality that transcends and includes the physical, revealing that the separation between matter and meaning, between the measurable and the immeasurable, is ultimately illusory. Within this perspective, metaphysics is not an abstract or speculative domain distinct from empirical science, but rather the ontological ground from which quantum phenomena and subsequent materialism arise, and to which they implicitly refer. Quantum physics, considered the cutting edge of modernist science, through its principles of wave-particle duality, superposition, entanglement, and the role of the observer, or those which measure either humans, computers, or machines, has undermined the classical Cartesian division between subject and object, mind and matter. In this light, metaphysics becomes the inquiry into the ultimate nature of this unified field of being, where consciousness and matter are not separate but enfolded. Therefore here, both metaphysics and quantum physics are taken as the inseparable ground of reality from which all arises and will inevitably return. Wherein the physical and the metaphysical are not distinct domains but dimensions of the same whole, also see the reference to diamond below, suggesting that the fabric of the cosmos is ultimately metaphysical in nature, with the physical being its emergent expression. Michael Egnor, see video in text post or right-hand corner of our YouTube video, an eminent neurosurgeon and philosopher, has an interesting take on the ebb and flow of this unfoldment. What does it mean to die? What does death really mean? If you think of a chair, a tree, and a dog, ask how these things die. Well, a chair, at least metaphorically, could be said to die. And what happens if a chair dies is that it's reduced to wood chips, just a pile of dust. You say, well, there's no longer any chair, it's just a pile of dust. The matter in the chair never goes away, but it's just dust now instead of a chair. The tree is the same thing. When the tree dies, it rots and just goes back into soil, and it is the same thing for the dog. So life is an integration of matter to make a living thing, and death is a disintegration of matter. When we die, our bodies don't go away, they disintegrate. But every atom inside our body will end up somewhere else, so the physical body can disintegrate. But can a spiritual soul disintegrate? To get a feeling for the answer to that question, think about the number 8. There are two ways that the number 8 can be represented. One is written down on a piece of paper, and the other is conceptually thinking about the number 8. Well, certainly the number 8 written on a piece of paper can disintegrate if you put the paper in fire and burn it. It just becomes a pile of ash. So, in that sense, the number 8 can die, can disintegrate if it's material. But the number 8 conceptually, one might say, the spiritual number 8, can't die. You're not going to hear from a mathematics department at the local university that the number 8 passed away yesterday, and so now we have to count from 6, 7, 9, 10, right? So numbers don't die, abstract things don't die, and spirits don't die. Matter disintegrates. Spirits can't disintegrate. And note that this immortality is natural. We are naturally immortal. It's in our nature that our spirit cannot disintegrate and cannot die. Your spiritual soul has no off switch. Your body has an off switch, but not your soul, and the soul is immortal. Metaphysical and quantum in nature. The crisis of modernity and the loss of the sacred. Modernity, in its flight from metaphysics, has rendered the cosmos mute, a vast mechanism without meaning. Secularization, industrialization, and the dominance of materialism have severed the deep connection between human life and the sacred order, culminating in the existential crisis that now threatens all life on our home, planet Earth. The world, once seen as a living theophany, is now approached as inert matter to be manipulated at our will and whim. The disenchantment of the world, as Max Weber described it, is accompanied by the rise of individualism, consumerism, and a utilitarian mindset that desacralizes time, space, and even the negation of the human soul. Religion, once the axis of civilization, has been relegated to private sentiment or politicized ideology. In this cultural vacuum, both spirit, meaning, and life, both human and non-human, suffer. This is well encapsulated by Rudi Lissau when he describes Ahriman, a representation of evil and darkness, as an evil spirit. His essential nature is expressed through his principal epithet, the lie, expressed as greed, wrath, and envy, on which much of globalized modernist culture is based. He is the calculating manipulator who tries not to seduce like Lucifer, but to enslave individual man to make him part of a collective, to let him forget his cosmic spiritual origins, to chain him to a lifeless earth. Religion as vertical descent and horizontal unfolding. Religion is not merely a social construct or cultural phenomenon, it is, at its heart, a vertical act, a descent of the divine into the human realm. This sacred eruption initiates a horizontal unfolding of spiritual truths into time, culture, and civilization. The interplay of this vertical transcendence with horizontal immanence lies at the heart of religious experience, informing the essence of the world's great traditions and the perennial philosophy that weaves through them all. In the convergence of the eternal and the temporal, religion becomes the medium through which the infinite touches the finite. Tradition as the seedbed of civilization. Each civilization, whether Islamic, Christian, Hindu, Jewish, or otherwise, emerges from a fundamental spiritual tradition that roots it in metaphysical truth. As Huston Smith once observed, tradition is the hand of the sacred reaching into history. Civilization, then, is not simply a human invention, but a crystallization of the sacred order within temporal existence. The vertical descent of revelation sparks the formation of civilizations. The horizontal spread embeds these truths in institutions, art, ethics, and social norms. Islamic civilization, animated by the principle of Tawhid, divine unity, gave rise to a cultural flowering from Andalusia to Persia, infusing law, art, science, and politics with a sense of divine purpose. Christianity, too, birthed a civilization shaped by the teachings of Christ, from Gothic cathedrals and scholastic philosophy to moral intuitions that still inform Western values. Even in its secular guise, modernity lives on the remnants of Christian ethical frameworks, human dignity, the sanctity of life, compassion, unconsciously drawn from Christian metaphysics. Thus, tradition is both the spiritual seed and cultural soil from which civilizations grow. It is not a relic of the past, but a living conduit for divine wisdom. The perennial philosophy, unity in diversity. The perennial philosophy, championed by thinkers like Michael Egnor, Frithjof Schuon, and Huston Smith, posits that all authentic religions emanate from a single metaphysical source. This sacred singularity, God beyond gods, see Paul Tillich, the courage to be, and the God within all, manifests in multiple revelations across history, each tailored to its context, yet pointing to the same ultimate reality. This perspective fosters a profound inclusivity without sacrificing doctrinal integrity. It does not reduce all religions to sameness, but recognizes their shared origin and spiritual purpose. The revelations of the Vedas, the Torah, the Gospels, and the Quran are not mutually exclusive. They are distinct but convergent expressions of divine truth. As the Quran affirms, to each among you we have prescribed a law and a clear way. If God had willed, he would have made you one nation. Quran 5:48. Even Eastern traditions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, reflect aspects of this eternal wisdom. The Hindu concept of Brahman, the Taoist vision of the way, and the Buddhist realization of shunyata, emptiness, all point to facets of the same ineffable reality, glimpsed through different lenses of being. Such a view encourages mutual respect and spiritual humility, qualities sorely needed in an age of sectarianism and religious exclusivism. The exoteric and esoteric dimensions. Both Islam and Christianity, like all major traditions, contain an outer exoteric form and an inner esoteric reality. In Islam, this is articulated in the Hadith of Gabriel. Islam, outer practice, Iman, faith, and Ihsan, spiritual excellence. Sufism, Tasawwuf, develops the esoteric dimension through practices of heart purification, divine remembrance, dhikr, and the cultivation of divine love. Christianity mirrors this structure in its mystical lineage, from the Desert Fathers to Meister Eckhart and the hesychasts of Eastern Orthodoxy. The imitation of Christ, the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, and the experience of agape, divine love, parallel the Sufi path of longing and union with the beloved. When these inner paths are forgotten, religion becomes either legalistic or hollow. True religion integrates the outer vessel with the inner light, ritual with realization, and belief with being. Love as the supreme principle. Perhaps the most profound bridge between Islam and Christianity lies in their shared emphasis on love as the essence of divine and human life. Christianity declares, God is love, 1 John 4:8, and centers its teachings on the love of God and neighbor. Islam likewise names God Al-Wadud, the loving, and describes the Prophet Muhammad as a mercy to the worlds. Sufi metaphysics teaches that love is the very cause of creation. I was a hidden treasure, and I loved to be known. Love is not merely an ethical mandate, but a metaphysical force that draws creation back to its source. It is the unifying energy that heals division, dissolves ego, and transforms the heart. Poets like Rumi, Hafiz, Ibn Arabi, Dante, and St. John of the Cross gave voice to this sacred love, crafting a language that transcends doctrine and culture. Their words, drawn from ecstatic experience, remind us that religion is not simply about salvation in the afterlife, but about awakening to divine presence here and now. It is the antithesis and the destroyer of Ahriman, integration of the feminine principle. Every true tradition honors not only divine transcendence, but also divine immanence, the receptive, intuitive, nurturing aspect of the sacred, often symbolized by the feminine. In Mary, Sophia, or Fatima al-Zahra, we see this hidden axis of wisdom and mercy. Shakti in Hinduism, Prajnaparamita in Buddhism, and Shekinah in Jewish mysticism all express the sacred feminine, the indwelling glory of the divine. Without this balance, humankind becomes overly abstract or patriarchal, losing its capacity to nourish the soul and heal the world. Furthermore, there is much evidence. Wars, the climate crisis, pollution, inequality, poverty, industrialization, predatory corporate capitalism, globalization, etc., to show that the past 300 years or so has been dominated by what we call masculine energy, mechanistic, material-centric, ego-dominant, power-dominant, hungry, competitive, deterministic. In order to rebalance this, we need an equal pull towards feminine energy, creative, soul-dominant, healing, caring, nurturing, cooperative, and harmonious. The importance of the feminine, with its capacity for birth, for bringing the light into the world, is well represented in a passage from Dante's Path by B. and R. Schaub. In Italian, luce means light, and for Dante, Luz is the symbol of our human capacity for illumination, for illuminating grace for those experiences of higher consciousness through which we come to see more deeply into reality, and even to experience its most cohesive, bonding essence, which is love. Mary is the symbol of that vast, unconditional love. Soul, spirit, and intellect, an integrated vision. In Islamic thought, particularly in classical philosophy and Sufism, AQL, intellect, is not limited to rational analysis, as in modernism, but is a faculty of perceiving spiritual truths. It is through this intellectus, distinct from discursive reason, that one apprehends the real, the spiritual, that which lies within and beyond the purely material. This view contrasts with much of post-Enlightenment Western philosophy, which split reason from revelation and consigned spirituality, at best, to the private sphere, and at worst, its negation. Yet, historically, both Islam and Christianity cultivated an integrated vision. The Christian scholastics like Thomas Aquinas and Islamic thinkers such as Avicenna and Al-Ghazali saw no contradiction between philosophy, theology, and mysticism. All were paths to truth, facets of the same diamond. This synthesis is echoed by Egnor, who critiques materialist neuroscience and affirms a themistic system understanding of the human person. According to Egnor, the soul is the immaterial, quantum enfoldment form of the body, the life-giving principle that encompasses vegetative, sensitive, and rational powers. The rational soul, unique to human beings, possesses spiritual faculties such as intellect and will, which cannot be reduced to material processes. Egnor distinguishes between soul, spirit, and mind as interrelated dimensions of the human being. The soul is the foundational life principle, animating the body and containing the faculties of life. The spirit is the immaterial aspect of the rational soul, specifically the powers of abstract thought and free will, which endure beyond death. The mind is the manifestation of these spiritual faculties, particularly intellect and will, which perform immaterial operations such as reasoning, moral judgment, and self-reflection. Defining the soul with Thomas Aquinas, metaphor of light. In contemplating the nature of the soul, Thomas Aquinas provides a compelling metaphor. Life on earth is akin to being within a dimly lit church, where one can see only what is illuminated by candlelight. According to Aquinas, the cessation of life, the extinguishing of the candles, does not mark the end of perception, but the transition to clarity. Upon death, as the dawn breaks, individuals are said to experience divine light, allowing for true understanding and perception beyond earthly limitations. Aquinas' metaphor serves to illustrate that while the soul may be entrenched in the physical realm, its full potential is realized only in the presence of divine light. The seeing that occurs in near-death experiences, described by individuals as an encounter with radiant beauty and profound understanding, is perceived not through physical eyes, but through the soul illuminated by divine truth. The soul as separate from the body. The evidence from neuroscience supports the assertion that the soul exists as a non-material entity, fundamentally different from the physical body. The personal experiences of patients with significant brain injuries and those who have undergone procedures impacting brain function demonstrate that aspects of consciousness persist beyond traditional material explanations. This indicates that the soul can operate independently of the brain. Aquinas' views further enrich this understanding. The soul is not merely a function of material existence, but the essence that animates life, allowing for intellect, free will, and emotional capacity. The soul retains its individuality and continues to exist even after the physical body undergoes disintegration upon death, emphasizing its immortality. As Egnor goes on to say, one question that has utterly fascinated me for many years, and I've thought about it philosophically, theologically, and scientifically, is when people have near-death experiences, they report beautiful scenes. They say the colours are just breathtaking and their vision is like nothing they've ever experienced on Earth. And, I'm a scientist, and I say, well, how can you see without eyes? We're talking about spiritual souls, and spiritual souls are neat things, but they don't have eyes. You're in an intermediate state. So how do you see anything? Thomas Aquinas addressed this question almost 1,000 years ago. He gave an analogy. Imagine that life on Earth is like being inside a church with stained glass windows at night, and the church is lit from indoors with candles, so it's kind of dim in there. You can see things, but you can't see the grandeur of the windows because it's dark outside, and you just see this dim inside of the church. Now, imagine you're getting towards daylight, and then the candles go out, and that's metaphorically when you die. But as the sun rises suddenly, you see incredibly beautiful things, the grandeur of the stained glass windows. You see by God's light from outside. So the light that people are seeing, I think, in near-death experiences is divine light, and that's how we see it's a different kind of light. This view not only affirms the immateriality and immortality of the soul, but also reclaims the human being as a spiritual composite, not a mere machine, but a creature who participates in a higher divine order. The operations of the mind in this vision are not reducible to brain function, but point beyond biology to metaphysical and theological realities. Reclaiming this synthesis could be vital for a renewed spiritual and intellectual culture in the modern world. It affirms that human reason is not autonomous or rootless, but grounded in the soul's spiritual capacities, an idea as true for the Sufi as for the scholastic, for the mystic as for the philosopher. The human being as microcosm. The human being is not an accident of evolution, but a microcosm, a theomorphic being, a mirror of the cosmos and a bridge between the visible and invisible worlds. In Christianity, this is the Imago Dei. In Islam, the Khalifa, the vice-gerent of God on earth. In knowing oneself, one knows the divine. The path of return is thus inward as well as upward, for the heart is the meeting place of heaven and earth. The role of art, symbol and beauty. Sacred art is not mere decoration. It is theology in colour, stone and rhythm. A single dome or chant can awaken the soul more deeply than 1,000 sermons. From the intricate patterns of Islamic calligraphy to the stained glass windows of Gothic cathedrals, from Byzantine icons to the sacred music of Gregorian chant, or the qawwali of the Sufis, beauty serves as a bridge between the sensible and the transcendent. Symbol, rhythm, and harmony are the languages through which the sacred reveals itself. Reconciling exclusivity and inclusivity. A common challenge in religious discourse is reconciling claims of exclusivity with the universal truths found in other paths. Islam asserts the finality of Muhammad's prophethood, and Christianity affirms the uniqueness of Christ. But within a perennial framework, these claims need not conflict with interfaith respect. They can be seen as expressions of divine particularity within the greater unity. Both the Bible and the Quran acknowledge previous revelations and the continuity of divine guidance. Rather than seeing truth as a zero-sum game, each tradition can affirm its role in a broader, sacred dialogue. Defending one's faith need not mean denigrating others. The infinite cannot be exhausted by any single formulation. Toward a new spiritual renaissance. In summary, the question of the soul's existence and immortality can be elucidated through a combination of neuroscience and philosophical reflections, particularly Aquinas' metaphor of light. evidence suggests that the soul operates beyond the physical confines of the brain, preserving individual consciousness, free will, and reason. As we reflect on the nature of the soul, we begin to appreciate the profound relationship between spirit and matter, recognizing that while our physical bodies may perish, the essence of who we are, the soul, abides and is illuminated by the divine. This understanding invites a richer exploration of human existence, bridging the gaps between science, philosophy, and spirituality. In recognizing the vertical descent of divine truth and the horizontal flowering of tradition, we gain a clearer vision of civilization as a sacred unfolding. Islam and Christianity, when seen through their esoteric hearts, are not adversaries, but interlocutors in a shared quest for the divine. The perennial philosophy, grounded in metaphysical realism and spiritual humility, offers a framework for engaging diversity without relativism and upholding tradition without exclusion. It reveals that the many paths of humanity are branches of the same sacred tree. The time has come not to abandon tradition, but to renew it, to let the living waters of revelation irrigate the arid plains of modernity. Only through such a spiritual reawakening can civilization be restored to its sacred center. In this vision, love is the bridge, unity the horizon, and the human heart the meeting place of heaven and earth.